for anything on blind SQL injection. That's not this talk. My voice is dying. I talk too much. Which is ironic that I stream and I do everything and I come to Derbycon for 2 days and I'm dead. So it's going to be my watch is going apeshit because it's now time for my talk. I know. So this is my first talk at Derbycon. This is the last Derbycon. So thank you. It's a fantastic conference. I am sad to see it go, as everybody's been saying. So, but with that, again, this is Hacking While Blind. So this is to talk about who am I. So I am the blind hacker. I try not to say that I'm disabled, but more or less differently abled. Let's see. Some of the things that I also like to do is I'm a big goonie, a big gamer, a big nerd. Total geek, but I also like to consider myself an educator, a mentor, and a life/cyber coach at this point. Let's see. I'm also, for my day job, I'm a hacker, a pen tester, a red teamer. My official job title is Director of Offensive Security at Active Cyber. I also like beer and bourbon, so if you see me at bars, I'd be glad to take some beer and bourbon off your hands. Let's see. So, other things that I do. So, one of the things that I personally like as a hacker, I'm more of a network guy, more of a systems guy. When you start getting into some of the web app stuff, it's a little tougher with the visually impaired impairment. I've got my personal ways around it. So those are, I'm getting better and better. But, a lot of these other tools are still built with a lot of GUI functionality. So it still gets tough for me to, I got to zoom out, kind of learn where everything is and move forward with that. So that's why I heart systems and I heart networks. Those are a lot easier for me. Modder. I like to, I still mod codes, games, scripts. I'm terrible at coming up with something fresh, but I will find somebody else's work and mod it to either suit my needs or suit the job's needs. I love modding hardware and SBCs. I know that sounds weird. Someone blind trying to play around with a soldering iron and things like that. But fortunately now I've learned that for a few dollars, I can actually just have someone in China do it and ship it to me. It takes a month to get to me sometimes because I'm sure they're wondering why there's this weird circuit board with USB dongles hanging off of it. But I'll talk if you're interested in more about that stuff. I have a lot of stuff on my streams, and I don't tweet about it much, but on my Discord. Let's see what else I have here. So again, really break it down. So the Blind Hacker, I started it last August. It's been a year or a little over a year now. What is it, September still? So that's been something I kind of grew, and I started talking about doing the streaming and mentoring because I wanted to talk at Derbycon. And I was like, I can do this. These are things that I really want to do. And so then I was all about it. I was like, yeah, I've got a couple of years to prepare. And then in January, Dave was like, oh, this will be the last one. Well, I guess I need to submit a talk and present at the last Derbycon. So here we are. A lot of community outreach. One of the fantastic things about being labeled the blind hacker is a lot of people go, hey, I'm visually impaired, I'm losing my vision, or I'm totally blind. And I have no clue how to use these tools. So I get a lot of community outreach people going, hey, what are ways that I can use tools and hex editors for the blind and things like that. And so I haven't found many of it. So again, I grabbed other people's code, I modded it, and a couple of these students that I was working with doing DFIR classes, now at least we're getting them some of the tools in the right order. So if you're a developer and you want to help out, I'll talk more of that in some other slides, but we could definitely use more help for CLI tools. And then, so that's the proactive outreach. What am I, what I have? It's called Leber's Hereditary Optic Neuropathy, LHON. So what is that? It's a mitochondrial, there's some fancy words here that so essentially the mitochondria of my optic nerve or of my whole nervous system, they don't produce 100% energy. If you remember from your biology classes in school, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It takes the ATP in, puts out power. Well, just imagine mine kind of being a little gimpy. He's functioning at 40, 50%. So, but it specifically affects the center of my nerve. So it's the center of my vision that's blurry. If you really want to go look some stuff up, I have it on my 14484 genome and allele. So if you've ever seen a genetic map, count 14,484 spaces, and that's the area that I'm affected by. But to me, I hit a button. That's life, and just keep going, right? So it's hard to explain what I see. So I found this terrible picture online. So if you look at the left picture, it's supposed to be a little girl holding a sunflower. And for me, my peripheral vision is actually mostly sharper. My center vision is very blurry. It's not black anymore. Early on when I got first affected, I couldn't see anything through the center of my vision. Right now, my extended vision is the first row in the center. After that, it's just fuzzy colors, as an example. So that's pretty much what it's like. The best way I can say is it's kind of like when you go underwater, you come up with chlorine eye, but focus that specifically in the center. So the right picture is what is more affected by. However, I can see the sunflowers or daisies in the background, whereas what I'm looking at is typically blurry or kind of misformed or structured. So how I do work, a lot of accessibility options. I particularly prefer magnification still, since I still have a larger portion of my vision, but at times I have used screen readers, a text-to-speech, voice-to-text, and, text output from terminals and stuff. If I have time, I'll try to show you guys an example of that. Screen magnifiers, screen readers. So my workflow, a lot of people are like, oh, what is your workflow like? It's got to be unique and interesting. I think it's the same as every other pen tester, red teamer, because I don't think I do it differently. I just look at it differently. Same thing. Enumerate, try harder, re-enumerate, exploit, grab a foothold and take home the bacon. I'll write a report. How I do it kind of continued, like specifically like the hacking. I definitely prefer CLI, things like Metasploit and Map. If you develop CLI tools, fantastic. I probably use them. Thank you. If your tools are heavily GUI, such as Nessus, Cobalt Strike GUI, I get to play a little bit more with because they do have the CLI. You can run a lot more commands these days, and we're moving towards that. But I just want to say, like, the difficulty sometimes is that the GUI there is really tough to use. When I'm trying to zoom out, if I exploited a bunch of boxes that are chained together and it's not organized right, it's still hard for me to see it. So that's why it's kind of like a meh face. And then, of course, my toughest challenges, again, still is things that are like heavy GUI heavy. So I love Bloodhound, but you guys that develop it got to get away from Neo4j and Java, because I can't. If I was fully blind, there's no way I could use it at all. So, if you're trying to develop tools, stick to command lines. Things like that are better for accessibility in everyone. So how to approach people, by the way. So a lot of things people go like, they come up to me and they're shy. And I'm like, well, I'm not a shy guy. I'm kind of extroverted, still an introverted hacker, but I like kind of outgoing, I guess. However, I do advise that you move very slowly and cautiously towards blind people. They are usually like rabid animals at first. Kidding. Just like a normal human being, right? Some of you that have approached me or know me, you come up, say hi. Sometimes, if I don't recognize you right away, just say your name, things like that. And if you're in a situation where, that you, think that they need help, just ask for, hey, do you need help? Just like a normal person, right? It's kind of the whole consent rules these days. Early on, when I started losing my vision, sometimes people would come up and like snatch things out of my hands, like, oh, you're not doing it right. Like, oh, how am I going to learn how to do it right if you're not going to let me fumble through this? Some of the things I say, if you do hire visually impaired people or work with them, just try to align with them in some way. And what I mean by that is if you know that they have similar interests to you, it's a normal human being thing. Just try to approach them and align with them and like say, hey, I understand what you're going through, or I want to align with you. Recognize the difference between frustration and misunderstanding, because sometimes, people go, oh, take right, left at the red thing, go right. And like, oh, hold on. And then they kind of like, oh, are you stupid? Like, no, I'm misunderstanding right now because I don't know these things or these words you're using. At times, fortunately I have a lot of my vision still, so I don't run into that often, but I see other people who are totally blind and they try to approach them like, hey, I'm here, don't freak out. Like, well, they know you're there. They can hear, right? Yeah. So, but when they go, hey, are you trying to get somewhere? Do you need help? And then you're trying to describe to them, you got to use, hey, it's actually about 2 blocks up. It's 2 blocks over. You're going to smell this walking by potentially. Try to, again, focus on what they might see or hear themselves. Oh, there's a terrible traffic stop here. You're going to want to be careful there because you might get hit by a car, but things like that. So, and a big example that I wanted to say is, like if you see me out in the lobbies, some people sometimes still just go, Joe. I'm like, me, Joe, or other Joes? And then people go, over here. And I'm like, visually give me a larger wave because I'm not going to be able to see your face again unless you're 10 feet away or so. So again, the big example is just do a big wave. Maybe if I'm really confused still, come retrieve me. Come, hey, we're over here. And then, I'll gladly come over. Let's see. So how to learn with someone with low vision. So you'll see LV for low vision, VI, visually impaired, and blind. So it's like different categories. It's like hard of hearing, deaf, things like that. So low vision is technically what I have, and I am visually impaired. I'm not actually blind. So those are the key differences there if you see LV, the VI. Again, just when you're approaching people, if you want to learn with them, if you want to teach from them, or if you want to be taught by them, it's still just approach them like a normal person. Most educators, most people that are learning, they're flexible. They'll learn with you. Just like with everything else, give them the same benefits of trying things on their own, kind of like the prior slide. Just let people fumble through it, so that way, it takes less and less time the more they do it, right? Outside of that, encourage them just like everybody else, right? Hey, you're doing it. Here's some key things that maybe I'm witnessing or seeing is going on. So here's some things you could try differently. But again, they're going to fumble through it and do it on their own anyway. One of the things that I was asked by a teacher who was like, hey, some of my students are blind. How do I deal with that? And I was like, well, if they ask for extra time, give them extra time. Don't just inherently assume that they're going to need it. That happened a lot when I was coming through high school and right after I lost my vision, because I forgot to say that earlier. It only started affecting me at the age of 16. So then teachers were like, oh, he needs all this extra time and we'll put him in another room and all these things. I'm like, well, I mean, if you give it to me in a format I can ingest and understand, I was done before most of the other students anyway. So it's like, no, I don't actually need all this extra time. But if I go, hey, you know what, this is something difficult for me, understand that might be something that'll happen. Recaps, sometimes if you're going over a complicated or sensitive topic, having a recap module where you're like, hey, did you understand the concept?
Hello folks, Geek here. Unfortunately, for some reason the audio dropped at this point, but resumes at about the 20-minute, 17-second mark. Sorry for the inconvenience.
or this is what's going on, and see if they can, just like with a regular education, see if they can reiterate back to you what you just iterated to them. Let's see. Be inclusive, of course, that's one of the big things that we talk about here in 2019, but some of the things that I don't see is people being more inclusive to even those people with disabilities. It's still kind of a hard thing when you shun people. And of course, lots of shell stuff, SSH. Ironically, I talked to TJ Knoll, and since his community outreach job with OffSec, I told him, hey, I'd love an accessibility version where I don't have a GUI, but I can spin up a screen reader and I'll help you drop tools in there. And literally, he's like, oh yeah, I'll go talk to Got Milk tomorrow. And then like today, all of a sudden, he shows me something that now there is a Kali accessibility option in the meta packages. So thanks for that. Let's see. So some examples. Some examples of like me at times going, hey, is this a version? Is this something based on my visual impairment, or is this something based on kind of my knowledge? So I took the OSCP at the beginning of 2018 now. So I actually only missed it by one of the 15-point boxes, or it was 25-point box, and I popped the shell on it, but I couldn't find the user. And the reason why is because the tool that I used was the Windows enum, and it pulled the clear text password and username out and put it in the file. But if the file was so big, I kept scrolling through. And so then I was like, all right, so moving on. So it was kind of one of those things like, all right, I get it now. And then other things, I love plain text. Shell output is fantastic. If you're going to build GUIs, make sure you add a CLI somewhere, or the ability to use some kind of API to control it. That's another thing I've talked to people that are totally blind about, like writing an API for Nessus, even though they sort of got rid of it. Oddly, it still works sometimes. But like writing it in terminal so that way they can still use the CLI. I was going to give an example of Nmap shell output, but we're running a little low on time here. So if you want to hear what an Nmap shell output sounds like later, I'll crank up some speakers, or we'll hijack some and we'll play some. We'll just keep doing that. Any questions? If you're really far out, use the honor system. Just yell your question out.
How long does it take to play that file?
I don't have it queued up at the moment, so I'm definitely going to have to take a moment to do it elsewhere. All right. If you want to contact me on Twitter, Twitch, I'm a streamer, by the way, as TheBlindHacker. I think I might have greased over that. I do Hack the Box. I stream. I do educational things. I mentor everybody who comes in there, even those who come in there and, you're not blind and, try to troll me, or why are you using Kali? Like, what other operating system you use? And they go, Black Arch. And I'm like, yeah, if I want a 28 gig download. No, I love it. And of course, Discord, if you find me on there, I think it's BlindHacker 1337.